Ladies and gentlemen, gaming friends, you are tuning in to adults who are going to be talking about cool stuff. This is ATACS, episode 17. That's an odd number. This is going to be an odd episode. I'm your host, Paul from Atlanta, and joining me today is Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello, Flex.
17 is also a prime number, so I'm going to say this is a prime episode. All
right, so we will call it I guess we'll just go ahead and say it. We're not planning on having a news segment for this episode, so that's perfect. Somehow the gods aligned to this. Also, we have with us Steph from Atlanta. Hello, Steph.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Okie dokie. We also have, it's a big table today, Mr. Ryan from Manhattan up in New York State. How are you, Mr. Ryan?
I'm awesome, as usual.
As usual. And last but not least, we have Mr. Nate from the sprawling metropolis of Wendell, North Carolina. Hello, Nate.
Well, hello.
How are things going in North Carolina?
Oh, they're splendid.
Absolutely excellent.
All it's 95-degree glory.
Yeah, very hot and summer breaky, so, you know.
Yeah, we've been having to run both air conditioners here in the house in Atlanta recently because it's been a little warm. So anyway, like I was saying earlier, this is going to be a little bit different from our previous formats. We are not planning on hitting any news stories for this particular podcast because there have been no news stories, at least not any big ones for the last couple of weeks, which is normal after we have, the big news dump around the E3 time frame. So we're just going to talk about video games. And I think that the best place to start talking about video games is we're going to see what Mr. Flex has been playing in Raleigh. Flex, what's been going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh, boy. So I have before I get to games, I'll touch on a non-game thing real quick. Is I watched the entire first season of the Netflix Castlevania animated series.
All 2 hours?
Yeah. 2 hours of it. Yeah, it's only 4 episodes, and each episode's like 20-25 minutes, so it's like shorter than a movie to watch all of them.
I actually sat down and watched that too.
Yeah,
Netflix has done that with a couple of their series, and it is annoying.
Yeah, I watched it all in 2 sittings. It does not take long. But they have already said there's going to be an 8-episode season 2, so there will be more. And I didn't. So who else has watched it? Nate said he watched it. Did you watch it, Ryan?
Not yet, no. Okay. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah, well, it won't take you long. But how did you like it, Nate?
I liked it pretty well. It's interesting. I like its tone, I guess, even though in a lot of ways you could say its tone is just like teen angst in visual form, but I don't know, like it's kind of neat. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, Trevor's kind of a jokey guy.
He is. He's a jokey guy.
I actually really like him.
Yeah.
I really like the setup they had for introducing Dracula and like why he's so angry.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was funny that he cried bloody tears.
Yes, there's a lot.
Oh my gosh, really?
A lot of very, very clear, like direct, very gothic stuff happening in that, like all the way through.
So is this like that his name is so much cooler backwards than it is forwards?
That character might also be in there.
Oh my gosh! Did they explain what a man is?
No, not yet.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Is this like Captain level Trevor Belmont? Or wait, was that Simon? No, that was Simon, wasn't it?
Yeah, Simon was the one in Rondo and Symphony. Trevor was the main playable protagonist in Castlevania 3. So I think this show is mostly following the Castlevania 3 plot, but it also works in some of the Alucard stuff from some of the other games. At least that's the impression from what I've read, is it's mostly Castlevania 3. But I really like the animation style. I like what they've done with the story setup. Like season 1 is mostly setup because it's just 4 short episodes.
Yeah.
I really like what they've done with the setup, and like my knock against season 1 is that it's short and it doesn't feel like a ton necessarily happens, but I like where they've set it up, and I'm really curious to see the next season.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff in there, some cool imagery, some decent choreography and fight scenes.
And it is insanely gory.
It's very violent and like they curse a lot, so it's definitely made for adults.
Holy cow, like that thing is just like
That's
10,
funny.
15 minutes in, it's just intestines everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh no, it sounds so edgy.
It's very edgy.
Yeah, if you're going to watch it, be warned that it is insanely gory. But I guess that's all on that, unless anyone else has anything on that. So the games I've been playing is I've hit 2 games fairly hard over the past 2 weeks, and I can talk about one or both of them as you guys want. But I have sunk a good number of hours into both Persona 5 and Hollow Knight.
All right.
I think we touched on Persona 5 a few times with the previous playthrough, but tell us about Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight is interesting. I'm enjoying it more as I play it. So I've probably played a good 6 or 7 hours of it at this point. And I have been posting my playthrough on YouTube, as we were talking about before we started recording, so you can find that. But I wasn't quite sure what to expect from the game, but it is definitely in that Metroid mold of, 2D action game exploring a big world. And is a lot more exploration focused than I would have expected. So it's very much just like, hey, dive in there. You don't know where you're going, and just explore. And it has a few interesting touches of its own. First of all, I really like the art style it's going for, and like the mood of the game. I think that's really effective. And it also brings, and it does an interesting thing with the map as well. So like, you don't have a map for any individual area until you find there's like a map scribe hidden in each area, and you have to find and purchase a map from him to get the map of that area. And even when you get that map, it doesn't fill in the entire area. It's just like it gives you part of it, and then it allows you to fill in the rest of yourself. So until you buy that map, even as you explore areas, it won't fill it in for you. So it's like once you buy the map, it like basically gives you the ability to fill in the map, if that makes sense. So what that does is like every time you go to a new area, you're kind of starting from scratch again, which is kind of interesting. So you never really feel like you're not exploring new territory, I guess. So that's kind of neat. And then there are also a lot of NPCs around. So like, I always feel weird, like it's saying like Dark Souls, but in a Dark Souls-like way, there are NPCs around who like kind of hint at things.
Is this the Dark Souls of Metroid?
Maybe. I mean, a lot of games do stuff like that, though, right? Whether it's like a Legend of Zelda or, like
the original Zelda.
Souls. But it's Dark Souls kind of harkens back to that slightly cryptic, like just get hints from NPCs like Ultima, Zelda, whatever.
Yeah, so they'll give you hints. You'll find some shopkeepers that you can buy stuff for. So there are these, I forget what they're called, charms, I think, but there are these items you can equip, and like you have a limited inventory of them. And you'll get hints from them and stuff, and there's also so they also do when you die, you lose your money, and you have one chance to run and get it back. So they have that going on. But for the most part, I'd say it's a lot more in the Metroid vein, and that's what's really grabbing me about it is like the more I go and like the more I explore the world and like find new alleyways to explore and new abilities and stuff, like it's starting to get its hooks in me.
Cool.
So are there any, if you don't mind me asking, are there any roguelike elements in Hollow Knight?
It's sort of the Dark Souls of roguelikes.
I was going to say, so can we call
the Dark Souls of roguelikes of
Metroidvania with roguelike elements?
Boy, yeah, and now all you have to do is tag that with early access, and you've triggered the apocalypse. Just letting you know you're getting close.
No, that's what Dead Cells is.
Oh no.
No, Hollow Knight doesn't really have many roguelike stuff, like other than I guess if you want to call the corpse run stuff roguelike-ish, but I don't really know that counts. No, but it is a set world, like a Metroid would be. Like there's no randomly generated stuff, like no permadeath. Like the only thing you lose when you die is your money if you don't go get it back. The world's preset, like I said. So I wouldn't say there's really any roguelike stuff in there, which I thought I'd heard something about that before it came out, but that is not the case. It is like the closest comparison for this game is definitely like a Metroid type game. It just has a few touches from some other things, which I think is cool because it helps sets it apart a little bit. Like it doesn't. I say its closest comparison is Metroid, but it doesn't really feel just like a Metroid game. Like it has enough of those touches to make it feel like its own thing, which is cool. It's also a very like actiony game. Like the combat's really snappy and feels really good. It's all melee combat.
Yeah. I was going to ask, how does the combat feel overall as you've gotten farther in?
Yeah, I think it feels really good. And I had a boss I fought last night who was just really strict with the timing. And it took me a few tries to beat it, and it was pretty tough. And like that was really satisfying to do that fight because the time, like the controls feel really solid. Like I think that's another thing that, cause like I never think of Metroid as like being a really tight action game.
No.
So like that's another thing I think this game does really well is I think the action does feel really good.
So what kind of upgrades are you getting typically? Are they combat focused? Are they exploration?
They're mostly exploration focused. The main like upgrades I've gotten have been like the first one you get is a dash move, an air dash that basically allows you to cross long gaps. Okay. You can kind of use that in combat to dodge things, but you probably get more use out of it for exploring. And then the charms I mentioned, they kind of have a little bit of both, like some combat, some exploration. And that's just depending on what you want to equip. Like I have one charm that makes my main melee attack have like a longer reach.
Okay.
I have one that like will make me heal. So, okay, another thing the game does is as you kill things, you get what's called, I think it's called soul. I think that's right. I don't know. But anyway.
Is that how you get the
I mean,
soul?
you get money. I forget what the currency is called, but I mean, you get currency, but you also have this meter in the upper left that fills up. And like you basically hold this button to focus and you consume stuff from that meter. I'm pretty sure it's called soul.
Bug souls.
To heal yourself. And you also use it to shoot a projectile.
Okay. These aren't Dark Souls, they're Hollow Souls, Wes.
They're like yeah, I mean it's definitely it's hard to not bring up Dark Souls.
I do have a question for you. And I have no idea, but there seems to be a lot of comparison between Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight. Did you play Shovel Knight?
I did play Shovel Knight.
Do you see like is there like any, I don't know, which one do you like better and why? Because there seems to be a lot of debate on the internet about which one's better.
That's funny. I haven't seen that debate at all. To me, they're actually very different games. Okay. Shovel Knight is very much in like the classic Mega Man mold where you have a certain number of linear levels and you go through them. Hollow Knight is very much about exploring this incredibly huge, sprawling world. And the more I play, the more I realize just how huge the world is. Like that's the thing about this game that's really starting to sink in is like it is a really big world. So to me, that's the big difference is Shovel Knight's more of a straightforward action game, whereas Hollow Knight's much more about exploration. I can't say which I like better at this point because I'm not done with Hollow Knight. I'm probably not even halfway done. But I really like both of them. I really like Shovel Knight. That was a fantastic game. And so far, I'm really liking Hollow Knight.
Can you co-op Hollow Knight the way that you can Shovel Knight, or is that a one-person?
I'm pretty sure Hollow Knight's a one-person. I actually didn't know Shovel Knight had co-op. That might have been something they added later. I played it at launch and don't remember that.
Yeah, I only know that because guilty pleasure. I watch a lot of Game Grumps, and they like to screw with each other a lot playing that. It's good fun.
Yeah. Yeah, they've updated Shovel Knight a lot. They've added a bunch of different like campaigns where you can play as some of the boss characters. Like I know you can play as Plague Knight now. But yeah, Hollow Knight's really cool. I'm enjoying it a lot. Definitely wanting to dig in more. Trying to think if there's anything else worth mentioning, but does anyone else have any questions about Hollow Knight?
I thought I read somewhere that it was coming to the Switch. Do you know if that's the case or not?
I have no idea. I've been playing it on Steam.
I think they have said that it is, but no definitive timeline on that yet.
Okay, I feel like I saw that somewhere on the internet in the last couple of days, and I didn't know whether to be excited or not.
I think they have said that they want to or plan to. I'm not sure which side of that they fall on, but it has been discussed, but not with a date yet.
Okay.
Yeah, a quick Google search seems to indicate that that's likely.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions about that. Has there been anything else going on in your corner of the world that you want to talk about?
The other game I've been playing is Persona 5.
I want to know what you think of that.
We can or cannot talk about that? If people
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling two other people have finished some Persona since the last time we did one of these.
Oh, have you finished too, Nate?
I did.
Yay!
So,
on the other end, I just started.
Yeah.
So how far are you in, and how are you liking it?
Spoiler cast time.
I am in the second palace.
Okay.
Nice.
And I am liking it a lot.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah,
if you were about to call it disappointing, I was going to punch you through the internet.
No, it's really good.
That's great.
It's funny too because I played like a handful of JRPGs over the past few years, and like sitting down to play Persona 5 and getting a few hours in, and then being like, okay, I am totally on board with this, and like it just being like the Persona team, like they clearly are like in the driver's seat of JRPGs right now. Like the Persona franchise now, like these days, like it is the cream of the crop for the JRPGs. Like they clearly know what they're doing more than others, and like they're the ones kind of with the Prime franchise right now. Like it's just so apparent. Like sitting down and playing that thing, like all right, I'm on board. Like this is good stuff. Yeah. There's just so many smart touches in that thing, and the way they like interweave their story and their characters and all that stuff with the gameplay mechanics is just so smart.
Sorry, Steph, go ahead.
Well, I mean, like what I have to say is actually extremely important. Just so you know, Persona 5 is celebrating Christmas in July, so free DLC for all of their Christmas outfits in battle.
Well, I mean, that's the most important thing, clearly.
That is. So you may continue now.
So moving away from silly outfits for a second. So like the thing that I think has surprised me, like I literally just finished the first palace 25 minutes ago before we got in here and started recording. Boy, they made me hate pretty much everything that I was supposed to hate in like 30 seconds. I mean, normally it takes a while for an RPG to ramp up to the point to where you're like, I'm going to murder that dude. But they did that in a way that I was like, wow, I didn't really expect that much emotional impact from the first 5 hours of the game.
Well, it doesn't help that you tend to take the villain's side for the first, 50% of the game sometimes, too. But, you really can't take some of these villains' side. They're too bad.
Yeah.
And they're all adults. Ew.
Those adults.
Yeah. That's actually the weirdest thing for me is that they use the word adult because it's like, if they just said there are bad people in the world, then it's like, okay, sure. But they're just basically like, no, adults are bad.
Yeah, they just use adult as another placeholder word for bad person.
Yeah, which is really weird.
Other adults actually are like, ugh. Some of us adults are really bad. And it's like, no, you are the adult. Stop.
Yeah. That is my single biggest complaint with the game thus far is I think the writing around that stuff is not the best.
Yeah.
I think they could have that same story and just not make it be like, oh, adults are bad. But yeah, I mean, the guy who's the first palace is he does some really bad stuff. And they make you want to, I was really eager to get through that palace and, put him in his place. It's also an interesting, so I played Personas 3 and 4 and, now playing 5. And it's interesting the way they've, kept the same gameplay template, but refined it in some ways. But the way they've also tweaked, the story themes while, still being recognizable as a Persona story, but tweaking the themes enough that it's its own different, worthwhile story. Because all of these games follow high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they've tweaked it just enough that it's okay, I'm really interested to see where this goes and where these characters go. Because, if you think about, Persona 4 was all about, facing each of the characters' own personal inner insecurities. Whereas this one is all about, tackling other people's the quote unquote evil adults, tackling their twisted desires, whatever you call it. So it's kind of a subtle difference, but it also ends up being a really like important one that separates the games in a way.
Well, I mean, like Persona 4 could be summed up in like one word. It's like truth. Like that's what you're doing is you're looking for truth in a world full of, lies.
Well, Persona 5 would be rebellion, then. That's the whole...
Yeah, rebellion, freedom, something like that.
Are you slave?
Yeah.
Want emancipation?
So yeah, I mean, it's the same setting, but each of these games is telling a story, and they're all... Like, each story has a different theme, right? And I think that, at least so far from what I've seen from the first one, they've done a pretty good job pulling off the theme of, like, you're a prisoner in more ways than one.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of prison imagery in that game, and I think it really works. Like they do a good job in these games of like putting a like consistent aesthetic across all the things you do, and like it really makes the games feel very cohesive.
I have a question, I guess for all three of you, and I think it's a really good like mixture of people because we have two people that have finished it and two people who have just started. So some of the concerns with this game coming out is Persona 4 had such a great chemistry of main characters.
Yeah.
And there was like this concern, like, can they actually do that again? And there's way more like, I guess, positive vibes about the group, like once you get further in. But like, how are you guys feeling about the connection? Because I know, Josh, you've got 3. So that means, Fowler, you're either on 3 or 4 at this point. You said you finished the second palace, right?
I'm in the middle of the second palace.
Okay, so like, how do you feel about
including my main protagonist, I have a party of 4, though I've met 2 other people who I'm pretty sure are going to be party members.
Gotcha. So what do you think of the chemistry?
I like the character so far. I think Ryuji needs to like calm himself down from time to time. He like flips out a little too quickly, but I mean, I do like the cast. I think Persona 4 was so magical because like that cast had just such immediate chemistry, and I don't think this cast has that like quite as quickly. But like so far, I like the characters individually. They maybe don't gel as much as Persona 4, but they have time to do that because I'm still early. But I like the characters for sure. Just maybe not quite as much as 4 yet.
Yeah, I don't really have too much of an opinion yet. I don't think I'm far enough in to really... I mean, I definitely think you're right about Ryuji. He's a little over the top, but at the same time, I find that very funny. So it's never...
It out so fast.
Yeah, so like...
I like Ryuji a lot, actually.
He's the one character I'm like on the fence about. All the other characters I like so far, but Ryuji's like, man, dude, just take a chill pill. Come on.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I'm just kind of okay with it is because he kind of represents like my id, to where it's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do something stupid. And he actually says it out loud. And I'm like, yeah, that would be really funny, but let's not do that because we're going to break everything. So I don't know. I just kind of like watching him and his reactions.
The murder hobo in the D&D group.
Yeah.
Yes. He is what you would call an itinerant adventurer. But yeah. So I think we've probably gotten our Persona talk out of the way. I'm really enjoying the game. I'm like 8 hours in, so Flex, you're probably like, what, 12 or 13 if you had to guess?
It's a little more than that. I think it's around 15, 16, something like that.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I've been sinking a lot of my time into as well.
I guess one last comment. I am a little, like, I played Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse last year, and they had like the demon conversation, like in combat to recruit demons, and that was not in Personas 3 and 4, but now they're doing it in 5, where you talk to the Personas to recruit them. I don't think I like that.
I don't like that system at all. But
yeah, because it feels a little random to me. Of just like, I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna pick something, and maybe they'll join, maybe they won't. Like,
you can get some abilities later on that help alleviate some of that, so it ends up not being a huge problem long term. Okay. But I don't like that system either.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But otherwise, I think they've tweaked a lot of the gameplay to actually be a little smoother and better. That's kind of the only knock I have. And the whole balance between like the simulation side of school life plus the dungeon crawling, I think still works well. Like, that's what makes that series.
Right. And they've done a good job in both aspects of that gameplay, I think. yeah, I'm looking forward to putting a lot more time into that game.
Me too.
As time goes on. Speaking of role playing games, Steph, you and I have been playing a decent amount of Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age. You want to talk about that some?
Oh yes, I would.
All right, yes. I need a quick survey, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
What's everyone's prior to the Zodiac Age? What's everyone's experience with Final Fantasy XII? I know Nate and I played it to completion.
I watched you play it to completion in the dorm room, and then I sunk about 15-ish hours into it on my own playthrough. And then the semester ended, so yeah.
Great.
I'm Bosch von Rossenberg from Dalmasca. that is my answer.
Don't believe Ondor's lies.
Don't believe Ondor's lies. So I got probably about 20 hours into it, and then like some big life stuff happened, and I didn't have any way to finish playing the game. And I've always wanted to go back and replay it, but and I was actually planning on doing that a year or two ago, but then I caught wind of the remake, and I was like, I'll just wait.
Ryan, did you play through it?
I have not. No, I have maybe an exposure to like the first 2 hours, just watching somebody over the shoulder. But I have the Zodiac Age now. I got it on pre-order, but that's one of the Final Fantasies I have not had a chance to enjoy.
Okay,
it's a good Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's one I like a lot. One of the ones that I feel like got a little, for whatever reason, a little overlooked, but I think it's great.
Did it come out right at the very end of the PS2 life cycle?
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
I feel like that's what did it.
Yeah, it literally came out weeks before the PS3 came out.
I think it's a combination, though, because it changed the battle style, and I think that got some critique. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was also a pretty hot period for other games, because I'm a bit of a Final Fantasy fan, and I didn't even touch it. So
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of hard to piggyback off of 11 not doing quite so well, and then 10 being what some people consider like the pinnacle of like the turn-based system, like with how that style went. So going in a completely new direction was kind of a lot to dump on fans who were wanting just old school after the MMO.
Yeah, I could see that. Part of what I liked about 12 is that it did try something very different, and I liked what it was trying. Because something I've appreciated about that series is when it does change things up more than some other franchises do. So I really like that 12 shook things up, and I thought it did it well.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the Zodiac Age.
I really, really, really enjoy the remake so far. It's funny, the game is less confusing than I remember it being. I remember playing it in 2006 and going, this is too hard and I hate it. But it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if they changed any of the tutorial stuff or what, but I'm not having any hard time picking up on it. I still hate Vaughn as much as I did before. I do appreciate, though, after playing Final Fantasy XIII and all the conundrum between Hope and Snow, I really appreciate Vaughn's ability to get over things really quick. So,
yeah.
So his conflict did not take 12 hours to resolve.
I remember feeling like as that game went, he just kind of fell to the background and like wasn't really in the story that much.
Yeah.
I don't mind him. I don't mind him a lot, but
yeah, he was just kind of a non-factor.
Penelo is much cooler than I remember. I wonder if that's because I have grown up and I realize she's probably right and Vaughn should sit down and shut up. She's much cooler than I remember.
Yeah.
But my favorite added addition is the speed up time thing, like the ×2 and the ×4.
Yeah,
that sounds
looks
great.
Yeah, it
ridiculous.
Does.
It looks so stupid, and I had promised myself I wasn't going to use it because it looked really dumb, and I get really immersed in these games. But I'm a level grinder. I love the numbers going up. So it didn't take very long for the ×4 button to happen, and I'd say we're probably, because Paul and I are playing it together, and I'd say we're about 3 hours in story-wise, but we're 13 hours in gameplay-wise, because I have murdered everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a ×4 speed, and then there's no wolf that is safe in the desert. Especially with the how powerful that the gambit system is. If you get in there and start to fiddle around, you can do some pretty cool stuff with that system very early on, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and with Paul not liking, he doesn't really get like a challenge out of beating like super hard games, and me liking the grinding, it's a pretty good match for a grindy RPG. I love it so far.
Yeah.
I do have one complaint. Oh my gosh, sorry, one complaint. They reorchestrated the music, which is really nice, but I know that there's nothing they can do for the voices, so you've got this crisp, beautiful music, and then you get these like muffled voices, and I'm like, no.
I remember at the time. I mean, first of all, I really like that game's soundtrack. I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous. But I do remember even the original, the voices sounding weirdly muffled.
Yeah, that's still here.
It's kind of a shame they couldn't do anything about that.
Yeah, and that's, as far as the technical aspects of the remake go, I mean, I think that they have done just a superb job with all of the technical aspects, graphics and sound. And, it's like Steph said, there's really not a lot you can do with the voices, because those voice actors, they're all either gone or they're like, 12 years older now? They're not going to sound the same.
Yeah.
So that's just, they were never going to be able to fix that, but now it really does stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and I do think the voice acting itself is good. It's just there's something about the sound quality of the voices.
It's like it was downsampled a little too much in post-production.
Yeah, there's something weird there.
Yeah, but other than that, and it's not nearly as bad in cinematics, because the cinematics are self-contained.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably the most annoying part of the game. But I still think that with all the work that they've done, it's a pretty minor complaint in the grand scheme of things of what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not let that hold anyone back from playing that game. And even if you have played it, it's been out. It was released in 2006. That was 11 years ago. I feel old just saying that, but it was an overlooked game, and this remake is extremely, extremely well done. So I think it's worth anyone's time whether you're a Final Fantasy fan or you're just a JRPG fan. Like, this is definitely something that's worth putting your time into.
Yeah. If I had time, I would definitely revisit it, because that's one of the Final Fantasies I kind of always, I just played through that game once, and I kind of always wanted to revisit it, potentially to dig my teeth into all the really tough hunts and stuff. Yeah, I do have one question. I'm sorry, Nate?
I was just saying that is a long one.
Yeah, that one's long. I do have one question, because I was reading something, and apparently there are jobs in this version. I don't remember there being jobs in the original. I remember the original just having a big license board that all the characters used, and it was the same for all the characters.
That has changed. Steph, you've been the one that's been putting all the points in the hats.
You can wear so many hats now. I actually really, really like it, because there's, a lot of benefits for picking a certain class over another one.
So is there no more license board?
There is a license board. It's just that license board is tailored to whatever class that you're getting. So if you're a monk, then you can get a license. You can get a skill that gives you more attack power if you're fighting without weapons.
So is it kind of like they chopped up the license board based on your class?
Kind of.
I feel like it's much smaller. I don't know how, because I know you can choose 2. You can end up with 2 jobs for each character. I don't know what they're going to do with that, because the license board is smaller, so I wonder if it'll expand or what it's going to do, because I'm all full. Anyway.
Depending on your class, your job, the license board looks different?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was the one thing I kind of thought was, I guess in some ways you could say there's no real difference between the characters. I think they started at different places on the license board, but it's always kind of a neat thing in my mind, which I was never going to do. But in theory, if you grinded enough, everyone could unlock everything on the license board, so everyone was literally every class at once.
Well, yeah, but if you, and I don't know how I remember this, but if you dug down into the actual stats of each character and what their stat growths were, then certain characters were more suited to do certain things.
Okay.
Like a max level Vaughn had the best stats in the game, whereas a max level Fran had the worst stats, but also in a different direction too. I don't remember exactly how it went, but basically, every character has a certain like set of stat growths that make them more useful as a white mage or a black mage or whatever. And now they've kind of taken that out and they've kind of replaced that with this license board thing now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I remember characters being clearly geared towards different roles. Like I remember Bosch was very clearly like your heavy hitter, and like Pinello was very clearly more of a mage. Like I remember them gearing characters more towards that, either based on their stats or where they started on the license board. I can't remember, but it sounds like they're kind of focusing that more in this.
It makes it simpler too. Like, I mean, because you can have set classes for people, and that means that you don't get into a spot that you could have gotten into in the original game where you kind of send everyone in the exact wrong direction on the board at once, and then you're kind of not optimized, under geared, and under everything. Which it's kind of hard to do that, but they made it to where you don't feel like that you're ever doing anything wrong when you're buying a new hat or a new mace or a new spell. You know?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to change.
It's really good. I'm really looking forward to sinking a lot of time into this game.
All right. Well, Steph, did you want to talk about anything else, or have we pretty much hit on the high points for what you've been rocking?
I mean, that's pretty good. The only thing I really want everyone to know that my Magikarp is still doing well and he's still jumping, and I'm actually almost finished with that game, and it's amazing still.
I was dying to know this.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I wanted the Magikarp update. So how many leagues are there in that?
Oh my gosh, like 6 or something. They just did a recent update and they added one, and I'm about to beat that one. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to continue to update the game with more levels, because I'm about to finish it.
Yeah,
it's good. It's good fun though. Good time sink. But that's all for me.
So I want to talk about a couple of games. I've been playing a lot of Persona recently, and I've completed my Final Fantasy 15 playthrough. Steph and I we did one thing that was like post game, and it was called the Piteous Ruins.
I forgot about that. I forgot we did that.
So just real quick, has anyone else played the Piteous Ruins?
So I seem to remember there was something, because I was doing the quest, and aren't there like 12 weapons? I guess is that related to the what is it called? Like your weapon, your arm something?
Yeah, your royal arms. No, these ruins have nothing to do with the royal arms.
Okay, because I remember seeing that some of those could only be unlocked post game, but I never did anything post game. So
a couple of fun things about the ruins is, number one, the ruins themselves were designed by one of the level designers from Bloodborne. So whenever you walk in, it is completely different from anything else in that game, like, period. It is a puzzle platforming section that there is no combat, and your job is basically to go from start to finish and learn the story of Ifrit and his love for Eos, and how the other gods in the game are actually all bad, and you have the entire storyline of the game wrong. From a like meta perspective, this is a game that was in development for 10 years. There's a lot of pieces and stuff that was pulled out and put back in, and these ruins are there to tell you a story in a very implicit way. Steph was good enough to actually find someone on the internet who had, basically come up with what you would call a narration for as you were going through the dungeon to kind of let you know what you were seeing. And it's too bad that story that's told in that dungeon couldn't get made into the game somewhere, because it's actually really good. The platforming is incredibly infuriating, and for the first half of the dungeon, it was rewarding in the way that Dark Souls was, where something is hard, but you eventually get it, and then you feel like, I have executed the art of learning, and I have achieved something. But then as we got into, I would say, the last 25% of that dungeon, the jumps just got so unforgiving and the checkpoints so few that I was just ready to put the controller down. It's a dungeon that you can go through in its entirety in about 20 minutes if you don't die. If you just go through and execute perfectly, it's about 20 minutes long. We were in there for 5.5 hours, so it took a while. But but the big reason that I just wanted to bring it up and talk about it for a minute is, everything in Final Fantasy 15 had a certain feel to it, and it was just very odd to me to find some post-game content that was just completely different from anything else in that entire game. It was just it was kind of neat, kind of weird. If you haven't done it and you've beat the game, it's kind of worth going in there just to look at. You don't really have to remember how to play because, like I said, there's not a lot of combat. There's not any combat. It's just you smashing your controller when you miss that jump for the 11th time. But it was pretty cool. Go to YouTube, watch a video, and just it was weird seeing all of that in there because I was not expecting to find a post game dungeon that deviated 100% from what the gameplay of the rest of that entire game was.
Yeah, and just to throw a quick shout out, I found that story in the fan theories on the Final Fantasy 15 subreddit, and the user was Perona77 that posted all the content. Very, very cool read.
Yeah, and some of it's fan theory, some of it's canon, but a lot of it is as they were writing and rewriting this game. Someone somewhere wrote a story for some version of this game, and that's kind of what those Piteous Ruins are. Is that story that's not really told. So I've been
pretty interesting actually, because I knew there were some post game dungeons. I figured they were kind of more of the same, but I'm actually kind of glad to hear. I don't know that I'll play it, but I probably will read or watch it to see what's up, because I was thinking about the other day, why did you fight? Spoiler for anybody listening, this FF15 spoiler, but you fight. Why do you fight Ifrit at the end of the game? Why did he kind of, which I guess you fought some of the other ones, but he actually seemed like he was standing with the villain.
Yeah, that's and honestly, that question and a lot of holes around that plot really are filled in if you start to read some of the stuff that was written for the game that came out in various ways, like marketing material and stuff like that, but was never actually made it into the quote unquote main story. And it was just kind of, a lot of that stuff does get filled in a way. I don't know how much of it I would consider canon, just because the main story doesn't say a lot about why Ifrit's doing what he's doing or anything else. But,
That's the problem. The main game has so many gaps. It's unfortunate that if the holes are canonically filled, that they're filled kind of outside of the game itself.
Right.
I definitely agree with you there. The fan theory rabbit, and it's really good, and it's really kind of disappointing that I sort of think the story that the fans have, theorized is better than what we got in the game itself. So.
Yeah, and it's not just baseless theory either. It's one of those where someone with Square Enix wrote this story, and then the game changed, and then it kind of got pulled. And it's a little like Mass Effect 3, how there was some stuff that was going on that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, it's because they had a rewrite of the overarching Mass Effect story in between Mass Effect 2 and 3. So that made some stuff in 2 not make sense, and some stuff in 3 not make sense. But if you dig down in there, you'll find out it's no, there was another story here. They just didn't tell it, not in the way that they should have. So it's just kind of neat to see that. The other game that I've been playing that I want to talk about real quick is I kind of have gotten back into Star Trek Online a little bit. And I had an MMO itch, so I decided to scratch it with a free game. And I'm just going to jump in and say that I am very surprised at how much they're still updating that game and how active it still is and how much free content that there is. You don't have to be a huge Star Trek fan to really enjoy it. The last time that I played was about a year and a half ago. So I logged in and I got my muscle memory back, and then I went over to see what the new content that they added was, and it's just pretty impressive that a free to play MMO that came out in 2006 or 2007 not only
I just looked it up because I was curious. I think it looks like 2010 was the official release, but who knows if there was like any betas or whatever's before that.
Yeah, but boy, there is a ton of content there. That game is not being ignored, and from what I can tell, they have a super active player base.
Yeah, I feel like I hear about this game like once or twice, like once every year or two. It just pops up, and they're like, "Yeah, this game's doing well and getting updates and all this other stuff." It's like, all right, sure, like this, because didn't it launch? No, it launched with a fee, but went free to play pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, and it was one of the first MMOs that went free to play, at least from my recollection, and that was a sign that the game was dying. They're like, oh man, no one's going to pay for this, so I guess we'll just make it free to play and see what happens. And I mean, in a lot of ways, this MMO kind of, blazed a few trails in how to actually, have a successful free to play MMO, and it's just cool to see,
Yeah. It's cool that game's still doing well. I think it came out on consoles recently too.
Yeah, there was a PS4, I think, right?
Yeah, and Xbox One, I think.
Okay.
And MMO discussion aside, like it's one of the few pieces of Star Trek like game content or Star Trek content period like out there, right? Like I can't think they were maybe working on like a new series, but Star Trek is like one of those beloved franchises that they pick up with and maybe like do a mediocre job with some game or some series every like 5 to 10 years and then put it back down.
Yeah, so there's been those movies that have been coming out recently, and those movies spawned a game, and the game and the movies were very similar in that they were very flashy, but really they were 6 out of 10 whenever you kind of dug into it. And there is a new Star Trek series coming out it's supposed to be a lot like Battlestar Galactica, and that's coming out on the CBS's new, what they're calling Digital All Access. It's their version of Netflix, which is kind of weird. But yeah, this is probably the only Star Trek video game that takes place in the canonical Star Trek universe that everyone thinks of. The Star Trek: The Next Generation, Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. That sort of timeline. And I'm not going to say that the gameplay is anything to write home about. I will say that the writing sticks very close to Star Trek. So if you are a fan of that series and that style, they've sort of expanded that out into sort of the expanded universe. But they've done it in a way that's pretty well, and it fits the original writing and vision of the series. So if you like MMOs, you'll like Star Trek Online. If you like Star Trek, you'll like Star Trek Online. But if you're trying to settle into something that has a lot of crisp gameplay, then you probably shouldn't be playing MMOs at all. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'll probably play it for another couple of weeks. Then I will call my itch scratched. I will uninstall and then move on to the next thing.
Paul's yearly MMO run.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that now. I've got about 1 month a year is dedicated to some MMO, and I never want to spend money on it because I know that the itch is going to go away. So I just generally get funneled back to Star Trek Online. So, all right. Well,
good job, Star Trek Online.
Thank you for existing. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and take our first break, and then when we come back, we're going to see what Mr. Ryan and Mr. Nate have been up to. So stick around, and we will be back right after this. Folks, we are back in our all video games ATACS special. We are adults. We're talking about cool stuff. This is ATACS episode 17. Mr. Ryan, what has been going on up in New York other than it being hot?
Oh, man. No comment on New York. The subways have been failing, I guess. But yeah, I've been playing games.
I mean, at least you're not having to take the subways. You don't have to take them excessively, do you? Or are you someone that has to live in them?
I used to have a daily commute, but this summer it's not as bad. I still use them because you use subways in New York, but not quite as frequently as a daily commute.
All right, so what you been playing?
Yeah, well, man, had a lot going on. I guess I'll try to keep it contained. So
Contain
one of the
yourself.
I could talk about games all day long. One of the big games I've been playing is a game called Everspace, which actually I've also done a Let's Play that I plan to upload soonish, probably today. But yeah, it's a Kickstarter I backed, developed by a studio called Rockfish Games. I think they're like a German kind of a mid-sized development studio, and basically what it is it's this. I've heard it described as arcadey, but it's definitely this action-focused shooter. Trying to think of how to describe it. So you're in a spaceship, it being Everspace, and it's an action game, and it has like roguelike elements. So basically, like you start a run and you jump to a sector, and within that sector, it's kind of randomly generated. So there might be different resources you can mine or pick up. Like, there might be a shipwreck. There might be like an outlaw base. There might be like a corporate company like mining some ore. There might be a black hole, a sun. Like there's all this stuff that can happen. And basically it plays sort of, it's an action game. So I don't know if FTL is the best comparison, but it has sort of that structure where you go from sector to sector, collecting resources and kind of upgrading your ship, trying to make it to, the end of the run, which I have not got to yet, but I've been hitting that game pretty hard lately, and it's...
So the combat's very action-y?
Yeah.
Is it like, are you like in cockpit view in your ship, or...
Cockpit view is an option.
I'm sorry?
Cockpit view is an option.
Okay.
I usually play it in like a third-person view because I just prefer to see my ship.
Gotcha.
But
how long has your longest run been?
I think it was
Time-wise.
116 minutes. I think that was my longest run, so that's what, 2 hours, just under 2 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, it's to me, it's really cool to see a game like in this genre that's kind of doing some new things. Because, I played Star Fox Zero. That was kind of disappointing. Like, I can't think of that many games in this kind of like space, space shooter genre that have been that good. I think there was Galaxy. It kind of got lukewarm receptions. Like, and I won't say that Everspace is like the most amazing game ever, but it's a really fun game, and they've put some like fresh mechanics in it. They've put the procedural generation. They've put like a permanent upgrade system. They have crafting. Like they have a lot of things that kind of make it like kind of a fresh take on this action or this space shooter. And it looks amazing. Like the visuals in this game are just, in my opinion, like kind of out of this world.
Yeah.
So
I haven't really heard about it that much before.
Are you playing it on Steam, Ron?
Yeah, it's a PC game.
Is it PC exclusive, or is it out for any of the other systems?
I think they're planning a PS4 release, maybe an Xbox release. I think they're also adding VR support.
Okay, it looks like it's just on PC for now, though.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that looks neat.
I mean, if you're looking for more space games, Paul was telling us about this hot game called No Man's Sky last time.
Called Star Trek Online.
Yeah, and there's also Star Trek Online. Paul's got your space games.
Well, if you'll notice, Paul was not talking about No Man's Sky this time around, so that might be because he hasn't played it since the last time. Anyway, moving on.
Just letting it die.
Mistakes were made.
So
yeah, I haven't heard of Everspace. This looks kind of neat.
So yeah, I mean it's a challenging action game. There is a bit of a slow ramp up with its permanent upgrade system. I think they went a little too hard on that because your first 3 runs, especially, you don't have a lot of options. But otherwise, I think they've done a lot of really good things with this, and I'm happy to see like a space shooter that I can get behind and that I've had a good time with.
Yeah, cool.
Other than that, I mean, I have a lot I could talk about, but I guess I do want to mention that I've still been hitting the World of Warcraft. My main character that I'm playing with my brother is level 91 now, and one funny thing that we've done, my brother and I have done, is apparently they've kind of like put a multiplier on lower level stuff. So like a couple days ago, we just walked into Molten Core and just like one-shotted everything all the way up to like Ragnaros, and then punched him in the face.
Yeah, they did a rebalancing of the numbers. It was the Great Stat Crunch, I think is what they called it somewhere on the internet. And the unintended or maybe intended side effect is that once you get to the kind of level 90-something that you're talking about, Ryan, the way that the numbers work means that nothing can hit you, nothing can hurt you, and you will one-shot almost everything below, like, level 70-something. So that means that there's a lot of raids that you can just go and walk in and not even have to worry about literally anything. It's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah, so that's been super novel. Like, you know, I'm not surprised that high level characters are able to solo like Molten Core, but I was surprised like just how much of the old content they've made like easily soloable or duoable, I guess. Like it's just really novel, like, you know, because I haven't played hardly any since vanilla. I think my account had been deactivated since 2007. You know, I played a little bit of Burning Crusade, and that was basically it. But, you know, back then, you know, you had people like organizing groups of, you know, 40 like decked out people, like every week, like on a strict schedule, like to go in and beat this content. And like, we just walk in and just start punching, like, literally just dropping everything. And I mean, it's a good way to see the content, and, you know, you can get some of the old stuff for like cosmetic purposes, but it's just that was really kind of fun and amusing to me. I guess
and it's talk about another game that's been really on a upswing lately. That last expansion got a lot of positive accolades from a lot of different places. So I'm glad to hear that you and your bro are still having some fun with it.
You guys are all playing MMOs this summer. Like, I feel like the rest of us need to jump on the bandwagon. You want to jump into EVE Online, Nate?
No,
that's hilarious.
I'm good.
Spreadsheets in space.
Spreadsheets in space. That is exactly what I was going to say.
All right. Well, maybe no MMOs this summer then.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's definitely some MMOs out there that you should play. EVE is not one of those unless you have nothing else to do, like at all, like ever. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Mr. Ryan, is that does that wrap up your gaming minute?
I guess the only other thing I'll mention is that, you know, I had talked on our last episode about some retro stuff I was doing. I haven't put a ton of time into that yet. I've been continuing my playthrough of Final Fantasy V, just past the second crystal. So that's kind of, the game is it's pretty fun though. I like the job system. So I should have some more on that in the next couple podcasts.
Okay. All right. Mr. Nate.
Yes, sir.
So, video games, they're pretty fun, huh?
You know, I
They're okay.
enjoy a video game here and there from time to time.
from time to time. All right. So are there any particular video games that you're enjoying in this time that you have to talk about here?
Yeah. So I have.
It's like no. Actually, I'm just done.
I'm good. Yeah, let's go.
It's been fun listening to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm gonna bounce. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of little things that I've barely touched on that I don't really have anything else to say about, like Dead Cells and that Gwent card game for The Witcher. I
have one question about the Gwent card game. Is it just that exact same card game?
I don't think it's like 100% the same thing, but the mechanics are basically the same. I think they've added a lot more cards and effects to it.
Okay, so they have fleshed it out somewhat.
Yeah, because like in The Witcher 3...
It was very simple in The Witcher 3.
It's very simple, and most cards in The Witcher 3 didn't have any effects. They were just a number.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this, from the little bit I played, which was like an hour or less, it seems like most cards have some special abilities or effects.
Okay.
Sorry. Have you played Hearthstone?
I did play a little bit of Hearthstone when that came out. I probably played it for a couple weeks, and I liked Hearthstone a good bit. I really like. This is maybe a weird thing about me. I don't know. I like learning how to play these kinds of collectible card games, and then I don't stick with them at all.
No, that's actually reasonable. I mean, you run up the learning curve, you see what the game's about, you see how deep the system is, and then you just kind of move on.
You get a glimpse at the rabbit hole and say, nope.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that summarizes it really well.
Yeah, I like to see the mechanics, because, like, you know, a lot of card games use a similar format and similar conventions and stuff like that. So I kind of like seeing, what does this one do that's different? And, like, get a base level understanding of it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm good. Moving on.
So, and the reason I was asking is because I haven't played The Witcher, so I haven't played Gwent. This one kind of caught my eye, and I was just wondering, like, I think it's like a free-to-play, it's in beta, like...
It's in beta, yeah.
How would you say, like, in terms of mechanics or structure, it might compare to another free-to-play, on digital CCG?
So I guess, if you don't have any background with Gwent at all, it is a little different from something like a Hearthstone or a Magic. And the biggest difference, I would say, is that every match is 3 rounds, and you have to win, best of 3. So the first player to win 2 rounds wins. But your hand size more or less carries over between rounds. So there's a lot of strategy around trying to gain an advantage in hand size in the early rounds so that you can take the later rounds. Which I think is pretty cool. Like, I think from my limited experience with it, like, there's a lot of potential there for mind games and and long-term strategy stuff. That's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think Gwent is cool. I played a lot of it in The Witcher 3 for whatever reason, and then this seems like a better version of that. So if you're interested, I would say check it out.
Yeah, there was a bit of a cult following, it seemed like, around Gwent in Witcher 3.
Yeah.
And I can say that I did try to play Gwent a little bit, but I was so overwhelmed with how big that The Witcher 3 was that I couldn't handle trying to learn a collectible card game inside of what was an already enormous RPG. But I'd heard a lot of chatter about it, and then I saw that they were having this like spinoff, and it just kind of makes me think. It's like, how often has that really happened? How often has there been a mini game inside of another game that is in and of itself popular enough to spin out into its own game?
I mean, they put Final Fantasy VII snowboarding on phones.
They tried.
They did.
Didn't they release Triple Triad?
They definitely did. It was not good, but they did it.
That was the worst part of that game. Anyway.
I think they also put the Final Fantasy IX card game out on its own.
That would make sense.
Tetramaster, I think, was that one.
Okay.
But it is rare. And I was similar to Paul, where Witcher 3 was so big Like, I played enough Gwent to learn the rules just because I wanted to see what it was, but like by just virtue of being such a long game, The Witcher 3, I didn't want to spend a bunch of hours of The Witcher 3 playing Gwent as well. It was like, no, I have a lot of other stuff to do in this game, so I didn't play it that much.
Yeah, and I mean, now that I've finished Witcher 3, it is on that list of games that I do intend to go back and replay, because I ended up critical pathing when I was about 3/4 of the way through. I just said, all right, main story to main story, please. I got to get done with this. But if I ever do go back and replay Witcher 3, I'll probably try and put a little more time into Gwent, because I won't be so overwhelmed with the rest of the game systems. But, it's just kind of neat to see that they've been able to take something like that, pull it out, put it out, and it's gotten, from what I've seen, it's gotten positive reception.
Yeah, I think it seems pretty solid. I probably won't spend very much time with it overall, but I was happy to see that because I did play a lot of Gwent in The Witcher 3 for whatever reason. But anyway, those are just some small things. I put like a little bit of time into Dead Cells just to see what that was. I don't really have much to say about it other than it seems neat. And I finished Persona 5, which we kind of already talked about. The main things I would say to wrap that.
I would like a quick final impression, especially because this is the first Persona game you've played to completion, right?
Yes.
So I have two questions other than like your just kind of final wrap-up thoughts. One, how did you feel given the length of the game by the end? And two, how did you like the game compared to like other JRPGs you played lately? Because the Persona games kind of have a very distinct like flow to them.
Yeah, they do, and in terms of the length, I think it was kind of up and down. I think there were points where I was getting fatigued, and then they would reel me back in, which is probably kind of necessary with any game of that length. You can't really stay totally engaged the whole time because it's just too long.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But and specifically, I would say you're in the second dungeon, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If I were an editor with complete autonomy over that game, I would take out the second dungeon.
Yeah, thus far the second dungeon's been weaker than the first one. Yeah.
The second dungeon felt extraneous, and the character that kind of comes along with that I didn't like throughout the whole game.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
I assume you're talking about Yusuke, and
yes.
So far he doesn't seem great.
Yes, Yusuke is the worst character in that game. Anyway.
We're going to have to save that for our ranking of Persona 5 characters podcast.
We've had a few back and forth. I think at some point we just need a ranking of Persona characters across the whole franchise.
Oh, man, no. You can get somebody else to host that.
What is it? Is it Nanako?
Nanako is first. We can all
Nanako 1, TA 2, and nobody else matters. Done.
Yeah, I haven't even
Kanji would like a moment to
Chie is
go
the
over why
worst
he is the
character.
best.
Oh, boy.
Chie is the worst character.
I'm sorry. Let me augment this list. 1, Nanako. 2, Chie. 3, Balthier. The rest doesn't matter.
Wait.
I'd be okay with that. Balthier can go into any game.
That's fine.
He's the leading man.
He is the leading man.
It's been too long since we've had
I'm just picturing now in Persona 5 when you get like the little moments where you attack somebody and like one of your teammates runs up and is like, I got this. It's like now it's like Balthier just appears out of nowhere and he says, I'm the leading man, and then shoots somebody.
Can Balthier be in Dancing All Night too?
That would be great.
Oh, that would be amazing. Jeez.
Crossover territory.
Well, yeah. So I just turned off the timer because it didn't really matter anymore for the podcast. But yeah, that's wonderful. Anyway,
actually, hold on. I do have a quick question for you. So, just in general, like, where would you rank this as far as like RPGs that you've played in general? Like, did you like it a lot? Like, do you think you'd go back and play other Personas or?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's hard to qualify that because they're so long, and I have so many other games that I want to play that I don't know necessarily.
Much free time to do it. Yeah.
I just don't know if I will go back and play other ones at this point, but I really, really liked it.
Cool.
I think that the game, Persona 5's battle system and sort of customizability with personas and different skills you get and like which team members you want to use. Which another thing I liked about that game that I don't know if it's true in other games or in the other ones or not, but like I switched around my party pretty much the whole game. Not only just going through dungeons, because there's the whole time structure, and if you get through a dungeon in less days, that's better. So you can kind of switch your players around to spread out your
just
SP
abusing the SP,
consumption,
and then you get abilities later on where you can switch them out during battles, which is really neat.
Oh.
And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that made me actually feel like I used the whole party, which rarely happens in a JRPG.
Well, and that's always, I mean, like that's legitimately that's a pretty big challenge for any RPG to pull off.
Yeah,
is to make all of the characters feel useful and make all of them feel as though that they're all main characters, not just like, hey, these two are the guys that you're going to use forever. Waka, you can go back in the back of the line. You know?
And not only make them useful in the moment, but give you like high scale, like larger mechanical reasons to do that, which the calendar structure does.
Yeah,
which is not easy.
Yeah,
no. I've always thought like, Persona in general does a great job of like giving you narrative and structural reasons to do things gameplay wise that feed back into each other in like ways that don't feel as contrived as some JRPGs do.
That is 100% what this game does that most JRPGs don't, or most games don't.
Mm-hmm.
How satisfied did you feel with your confident ratings when you finished? Does it make you want to go back and play a new game plus, or did you get pretty far with where you wanted to go?
I got pretty far. I think there was only one team member that I didn't max out, and only like 2 or maybe 3 people outside of the team that I didn't max out.
Oh wow!
Good.
That's really good.
I was just like, I don't care about them. I don't need to be best friends with Yusuke. He sucks.
Well, the most important question though now is who did you romance?
I actually did not romance anybody.
What?
Which is kind of a hilarious way to play, because you just end up, maxing out your confidant rankings with all these people, and then they're like, we could be maybe more than friends, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
I had never thought about it, but narratively, that is really funny.
It was pretty funny.
You said that, and I was like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Well, I guess you can." I don't know why I didn't think.
I mean, Nate's heart's still with Chie, so he just kind of
moving on.
Moving on away from the worst love interest. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah,
we all love steak.
So we all love steak. That's right.
So I have one last Persona question, and this is, I think Steph and I both kind of asked this in a way, is like obviously there have been the big Titan juggernaut franchises like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and whatever else over time. When I played Persona 4, I kind of felt like, all right, like Persona is kind of becoming like the kind of the quote unquote main JRPG franchise right now, and I feel like with 5 they've just kind of like they've kind of cemented that in a way. Do you kind of feel that way, given the JRPGs you've played over the past, I don't know, 5-ish years or so?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that they definitely design and think about the way they construct these games in a totally fresh and innovative way that really works for me and seems to work for a lot of people. And I'm really happy that they're doing it, because the JRPGs had their ups and downs, let's say. And
and for how traditional of a JRPG that Persona 5 kind of is, they still found a way to not make it feel crappy. I mean, what was that game that Square Enix released? I Am Setsuna. That was supposed to be a pretty traditional JRPG that did not get a lot of great reception. Because in part it was a traditional JRPG, and that's not enough to move video games in 2017.
Right.
Unless
I would say, and I would say there are parts about Persona that are very not traditional.
Yeah, it's very forward thinking in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there are definitely traditional parts about it, but I think what makes it stand out are the parts that aren't traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that game's
anyway.
great. The only other thing I wanted to call out about it is that I think that the sort of larger movements of the plot and the story, which I'm not going to say anything specific about, kept me really interested through the like mid and later half of that game in ways that I wasn't really quite expecting. And then the finale, I was kind of like, oh, okay. But that's all right. I can forgive them for that.
I was okay with the finale, but I do agree there were times toward the last, I don't know, like, it sounds like a lot, but like 11 or 15 hours, I was like, I'm ready to be finished. Can we finish? I don't want to do this anymore. But you're right. Like, for some reason, I'd be like, I'll just play a day, and then I get sucked right back in. So
Yeah, they definitely kept bringing me back in with new and interesting ideas that I didn't quite expect them to go for. And then it goes full JRPG at the very end.
Full JRPG, full anime.
Full anime, full all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of bummed me out, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Then the other stuff I've been playing is a little game called Snake Pass and Nier Automata. I don't know if we should talk about both of those. I don't know how we are on time.
I started playing Nier too, but I don't think I've played a lot to give like a really good opinion about it yet, but I'm probably about 3 hours into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, how much Nier have you guys played?
I just finished the first ending this morning, so ending A.
Okay, and if you don't mind me asking, like, how are you feeling about the game so far?
I really like it, actually.
Okay. It's going to keep going?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep going.
So is the main thing... The thing I've heard is the driving force of that game is the story stuff. Like, is that what makes you want to keep going?
I mean, partially, I'm going to keep going because that's what I've heard is the main thing. I don't know that I've necessarily gotten that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard it's like... What I've heard is like kind of halfway through the second playthrough is when around the time, give or take, when people start getting hooked. That's kind of the word on the street I've heard.
Yeah, like there's definitely interesting stuff.
See, I got pretty hooked immediately just because it was actually challenging. Like I'm very embarrassed by my first time trying to figure out how to not suck. It's very challenging. Even if I didn't like the story, I love the changing of perspectives in the gameplay. It's so good. Like Ryan, you were really right. It's captivating.
Oh, sorry. What was the point I was right about?
A lot of stuff about Nier, because I remember you talking about it.
I think Ryan did not like the game.
Yeah, overall,
I thought you did.
I mean, so I enjoyed the combat and gameplay, but I felt like a lot of the content. Yeah, I mean that part was fun. I mean it's a polished platinum game, but I did a lot of side quests, and I felt like most of that content was rote, and the story beats. As I got more and more into the story, it actually turned me off more and more than turned me on. On a side note, you should watch the Honest trailer. Once you decide you're done with Nier, you should watch the Honest trailer for that game because it summarizes it up in a pretty good way.
That's funny. I think to sort of pick up what you said, like I did a fair amount of the side quests, and I think on the surface they're pretty bland fetch quests. And they kind of make you just run all over the world over and over. One thing I did not expect when I started that game, probably just because I didn't really look into it very much, is that it's kind of an open world game with just side quests everywhere. But yeah.
Is there experience? Do you level up?
Yeah, you do level up.
Okay.
You get items. There's a lot of character customization. So you have multiple weapon slots that you can swap between where you have 2 weapons each. One is your light attack and one is your heavy. Different weapon classes. Then you have your pod, which is your ranged attacks and like special abilities that you can equip. And then you have a set of plug-in chips that you can customize that give you all sorts of passive bonuses like more HP or faster run speed or just more damage for melee or ranged attacks, or even some more complicated stuff like healing when you kill something, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of customization. I think the combat system is pretty good, even if it feels a little frantic most of the time.
Does it feel similar to other Platinum games? Because you've played a number of them.
Yes. Sort of. It has your light and heavy and combos, and a dash that's like a dodge where you're invincible during it, and if you time it right, then you get a counter. So
do you have witch time?
It's not witch time, but if you dash just at the right time, you kind of like phase out of existence for a second, and if you press an attack during that, you do a counter attack. So
okay,
it has all of those standard character action things that you would expect. But then,
have you? Just as a quick aside, have you started the second playthrough yet? Have you played any of it?
No, I literally just this morning finished the first ending, got my save for completing that, and haven't started that yet.
Okay. Oh, just as a heads up.
If you had not heard all the buzz on the internet, would you be starting a second playthrough, or is like kind of knowing that there's the rabbit hole goes so much deeper, the main impetus to keep going?
Well,
if that makes sense.
I guess so. Like, if I thought it was just like a new game plus the way every other game is a new game plus, I wouldn't do that because I don't do that in most games. If I knew that the story continued, I think I would probably continue.
Okay.
I don't think the story for the first ending is like amazing or anything, and it's mostly just weird. But there are definitely some themes that they're bringing up that I'm hoping they touch on more, and it sounds like they probably will, that I think are interesting. So I'm really curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. I'll be curious as well.
But yeah, it's fun. It, like we've already touched on, it changes perspectives and gameplay styles randomly here and there. In addition to like all the Bayonetta style action that we just described, even in normal combat, you also just have your ranged attack. So I'm playing on PS4, so you hold down R1 to shoot, and you right stick to aim. So as your left stick to move, and then using, square and triangles for light and heavy, and R2 for dodge, you can aim with the right stick and shoot with R1. So it's kind of like you're playing Bayonetta and a shooter at the same time.
Wow.
I just jam on R2 and hope I dodge everything.
Can you break dance and shoot bullets everywhere while you do?
Unfortunately not, at least not anything I've found so far. But,
Hey, you're really bumming me out here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the bottom line is just don't buy Nier.
Just play Bayonetta 2 again.
Just play Bayonetta. Bayonetta's real good, so I mean...
Bayonetta is real good. No, I do want to try this game. It sounds like you're digging it and going to keep carrying on.
Going to keep going. I don't know if I'll do all the side content because, like I said, most of that seems pretty bland so far, but
yeah,
we'll see. Then the last game, if you guys wanted to talk about snakes, I've been playing Snake Pass.
I do have one question. Even if we don't go long, I have to ask one question. It's twofold. Because I know you're okay. Yes or no? Are you a fan of 3D platformers?
Generally, yeah. I wouldn't say they're like my favorites, but
name 3 3D platformers that do not contain the word Mario that you love.
That I love? Like favorite games of all time?
Sonic 3D Blaster.
I'll let you determine what love means. I mean, I guess I am thinking like ones that you're just like, oh man, this game is freaking amazing.
Yeah,
Jack and Daxter.
I don't even know if I have that, honestly. Like, I really like Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh, hell yeah. Jack and Daxter 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I haven't played those, but I definitely played some of those sort of PS1 era games like Spyro and all that stuff and remember enjoying them, although I don't know if they're really great games.
Fair enough.
Grow Home is like an amazing game.
It's okay.
It's pretty great.
So is Snake Pass a 3D platformer?
Yeah, it is. You play as a snake. His name is Noodle. He's a vegetarian.
Oh, that's a good name.
Is this the game we were watching?
Yep.
So where you have kind of, I guess this is the Grow Home style, like you're like moving your snake around and trying to like physically like.
Yeah. a lot of like complicated controls to try to mimic being a snake, basically. So you can hold.
And you're primarily collecting stuff?
Yeah, it's 100% a 3D collectibles game. It's just that the core movement is all based around you being a snake instead of jumping and wall jumping, and there's no enemies or anything like that. You're just a snake.
Right. So is this scratching an itch for you that those kind of games that you like scratch?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I don't think I like it as much as something like a Grow Home or even a Grow Up, but it's cool. I like seeing the unique like movement style that it has, and like trying to like wrap my head around like, hey, this coin is floating like 3 feet off of this ledge. How in the world am I going to get that?
Yeah,
like
And
simple stuff that looks simple should like ends up being super difficult.
You kind of literally have to wrap your head around some things.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. What are the things that maybe don't hold up as well for you?
I don't like the checkpointing system, even though it sort of feels like they had to do it the way they did. So there's just literal checkpoints laying around the world that you have to walk over to save anything you've collected. But if they didn't do that, then you would just be jumping off ledges to grab things and fall to your death.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of cases where it feels like, oh, they probably should have put a checkpoint here, but they didn't. So if I fall at the end of a long stretch of things, then I have to redo a bunch, which isn't great.
Yeah.
That's probably my main complaint. I think the rest is just that, it just doesn't do a ton.
When I saw it just seemed kind of bland.
Yeah, it's not bland. Like, it's charming, and the music's nice, and it's all colorful, but I just don't think it's like a super deep game. You're a snake. You learn how to snake. I
guess that's what I meant is, it just didn't seem like there was a lot to it.
Yeah.
Snake all the things.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Snake Pass. It's fun, but, it's a small game. You're not going to get, like, 100 hours out of it.
And with the rash of 60, 70, 80, 100-hour games that have been coming out this year, that's okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for us here for episode 17. Fletch, what are you playing next?
I'm going to keep trucking with Persona 5 and Hollow Knight.
All right.
Keep on keeping on.
Steph, what do you have coming up next?
Gonna continue to grind our way through Final Fantasy XII, and going to be playing some Nier and finishing up Magikarp Jump.
All right, Mr. Ryan.
I'm still juggling a few things. Working my way through Everspace, playing Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, and Final Fantasy V. I actually want to do a bit of a backlog grooming. I was looking at my backlog, and it's getting a little long, so might be working on that as well.
Okay. Nate, what do you have coming up?
I'm going to dive into the next playthrough of Nier, finish Snake Pass, and I don't really know exactly what I'm going to start after that. Maybe Prey?
Okay, all right. I think as far as for me, Persona 5 and Final Fantasy 12 are going to be about the only things that I'll be playing, with probably some Star Trek Online interspersed in here and there. So, yeah. Well, this has been ATACS episode number 17, and we hope that you'll come back and join us in about 2 weeks when we reconvene to talk about all the games that we actually didn't play that we said that we were going to. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.